Shabbat HaGadol et Tehillah HaKatan.
Exactly. The rabbi must have scared everybody. He said, I'd like to see you all here next Saturday.
The people do get, like, shuled out.
Yeah.
You go Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, well, they all came last weekend.
That's right. I've done my quota for the year.
So,
Jay is not feeling well, but
Jay's not feeling
we
good?
had him in the opinion for a couple of days.
Yes, you may. Yeah, you can do that.
That's the. Sure. Perfect. That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
Two Torahs today then too?
No, only one Torah. No, Shabbat HaGadol has a special Haftarah, but not a special Maftir.
Okay.
So only one Torah.
Okay. Right. We're gonna wait until we have a few more people on this one.
No, we start on time.
Okay. No, you can call the pages. Sure.
I find it's kind of
Today is April 1st, yes.
easier to do. Looking at page 6, it doesn't work in this book.
No, well, I wonder what happened. Shabbat Shalom.
Time? I got a few more minutes. A minute or so.
Not that there's gonna be a rush.
This is, you need to have one of those like that. This thing, really,
Yeah. Well, I looked at that book and he does have things marked in it.
Oh,
but
yeah, it's
I have this marked, so I just,
It'll confuse you. It's
yeah.
just mark
I just said I'll just stick with this one.
Yeah. For a second. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Congregation Bnai Israel on this Shabbat Hagadol. The Birchot HaShachar begins on page 65. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lesavi v'ina lehavin yom yolayla.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzitoni b'tzamo.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sesani Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Sesani ben Harim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Pagei v'ivrim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Maldish ramim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Matesarim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ktefufim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Raka aretz hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Sesani li kosorki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Chasim b'sadei gever.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer yisrael bigara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter yisrael tifara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hanoten li'yakoah.
Amen. You may be seated.
Utnenu hayom uvchol yom l'chesed rachamim ve'enecha ve'enei ve'onenu kol ronenu takmilenu hasadim tovim baruch atah Adonai gomel hasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. Yiratzom afanecha Adonai v'lev. Ashreinu matov helkenu umanaim gorelenu mayafa Yerushalayinu Ashreinu shadnafnu maksimim amarivim ervavoker v'omrim pamai v'chol yom Shema Yisrael Anayin Anayakad. Kadesh Eshincha al Mikdash Shemecha v'Kadesh Eshincha v'Olamecha u'Vishuvacha Tarim v'Tagbir Karnenu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Eshincha Barabim. Yehiratzom afanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'le'avoteinu shetiten elkeinu v'torateka v'niyeh mitalmidav shel Aaron hakohen ovhev shalom rodev shalom ovhev et habriot u'korban leTorah.
Under page 72, it's time for Shabbat.
Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Abu Hayu Havim Omim B'Meit HaMikdash Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. Od Yanuvun V'Seva Sheni Ranani Yeyu L'Hagiki Yashar Adonai Turi V'Lo Avlatavo.
Page 81.
Mizmor Shir Hanukat Habayit La David. Afachta misbdei lemacholi pitachta sakiva tazreni simcha lema'an l'ter mercha kavod v'yalon yadon Adonai hayitzion lo decha.
Mourner's Cottage, page 82. Mourners, those of you in your site, please rise.
Yitgadal v'yikadash shmei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divra kirtei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chayet akol beit Yisrael. Bagalav Yizvan Kari v'imru
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbam u'barach le'olam ha'amei amaya.
Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yipawar, V'imran, V'itnaseh, V'itadar, V'italev, V'italav, Shmei Dekudesha,
V'yechu.
La'ela Minkol Birchata V'shirata, Tushluchata V'nechamata, Damiran V'yalma V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemayim V'chayim Aleina V'yako Yisrael V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'imrav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleina V'yako Yisrael V'imru Amen.
Amen. We rise, page 83.
Baruch Shema
Baruch
V'ya'alam
Shema V'ya'alam
Baruch. Yachid Heolami Melech Meshubah Umfa'ar Adei Ad Shemo Gadol Baruch Adonai Melech Mechulol V'Tishbacho.
Amen. You may be seated.
Odu Lana Kiru V'Shmo. Ki ko Elohi Haimim Elilim V'Adonai Shamayim Asa. Ramamu Adonai Eloheinu Vishtakavu Lehadram Raglau Kadosh Hu Ramu Adonai Eloheinu Vishtakavu Lehar Kadosh Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu V'Hu Rakum V'Kaper Avon V'Elo Yasi. Adonai Tzvaot Ashrei Adam Botech Bach Adonai Hoshia Melech B'Yom Kareinu Hoshia Never Nachotecha. V'ani v'hasacha v'atachti yagel b'yeshuatecha ashira Adonai ki makama alai lemaseyas mizmor leDavid. Yehiyu l'raton imrei pi l'hagayon libi lefunecha Adonai tzuri v'lo v'goali. Bodeh Adonai nefesh avadu da v'lo ya'ashumu kol hatotim bo. Tefillah leMoshe ish ha'Elohim. Vayehi na'om Adonai Eloheinu aleinu u'ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu u'ma'aseh yadeinu konanehu. Yigra eni ve'aenihu imo anochi v'tzara v'achal tehu ve'akvehu orak yamin ashbi'ehu ve'arehu b'shuati orak yamin ashbi'ehu ve'arehu b'shuati. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Hashem Adonai, hallelujah, Avdei Adonai. Beit Yisrael Baruch et Adonai, Beit Aharon Baruch et Adonai, Beit HaLevi Baruch et Adonai, Yirei Adonai Baruch et Adonai, Baruch Adonai Mitzion Shochein Yerushalayim. Hallelujah.
You rise for Psalm 136 on page 92.
Hodu Adonai Kito Ki Leom Hasto. Noten lechem lechol b'sar ki le'amasto, hodu le'el hashamayim ki le'amasto.
Rananu tzadikim.
Ranu tzadikim v'Adonai, le'shurim
May be seated.
v'batayila. Nafshenu hikta laranai etrenu maginenu kivo yismach libenu ki v'shem kasho bataknu yehi hastakaranai alenu kasher yahalu la. He's more shir le'om HaShabbat. Odya Nuvum Vaseda Shenani Varanani Yu Lehagiki Yashar Adonai Suriva Lo Avlata Vo Adonai Malacha Yotlavash Edoteka Ne'emu Meod Lavakad Neavak Kodesh Anai Le'orach Yamim Yehi Kavod Anai Le'olam Yismacha. V'hurachum v'kaberavan v'lo yashkid v'hirba l'shiva po v'lo yir kolamato Adonai Oshia Melech yaninu v'yom kareinu asher tevetecha ojulu chatzela. Tehilat anai v'verpi v'vor kol v'sar shen kadsher li'olam v'ed v'nachnu nevrayam yatav v'olam hallelujah hallelujah yo nafshi Adonai. Adonai Shemer et Gerim Yadom V'Almana Yoded V'der Rashaim Yaveh Imochnei Olam Haitzion Lador V'dor Hallelujah Hallelujah Kitos and Hilah. Ma'agi devarav Yaakov hukav mishpatav Yisrael lo asa ken l'chol goy mishpatim b'al yada'um hallelujah 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 Adonai min hashamayim hallelujah b'mromem. Vayeron keren lemotila l'chasidav livnei Yisrael am karovo hallelujah hallelujah shir nashir adash. Lesar machahem v'tzikem v'divdeghem v'karvlei bartzah lesabahem mishpat katuv hadarhu l'chol hasidav hallelujah hallelujah v'sa'utso. Haluso Slay Shama, Haluso Tele Terua, Kolon Shamat Elia, Hallelujah, Kolon Shamat Elia, Hallelujah, Baruch Adonai, Amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, Osa Niflaot Lavado, Uroshin Kavod Eolam, V'yimalei Kavod Ekol Haaretz, Amen v'Amen.
Page 101, please rise.
V'varech David Adonai. Atahu Adonai Elohim Asher Bacharta Be'Avraham Ve'Hotzeto Mayur Kastim V'Samta Shemo Avraham U'Matata Et Lavavo Ne'aman Lefanecha
Lecharot imot habrit la'ateta tzedek ha'liva.
V'Hayam V'Kata Lifnehem Ve'Yavur Padoch Hayam Ve'Yavasha Ve'et Rofehem Hashlachtat Minzoko Komo Evan V'Mayim Azim
Vayosha Evan Moshe mi'Mitzrayim.
V'yar Israel et hayagdol asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim v'yira'am et Adonai v'yaminu b'Adonai uv Moshe avdo.
Az Yashir Moshe Bnei Israel Shirah Adolav.
Adonai yimoch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimoch le'olam va'ed, Ki Adonai hamlucha u'Moshe v'goyim v'alu Mosheim b'har Tzion nishpa et ha'atav v'haya v'ayta Adonai hamlucha v'haya Adonai lamelech al kol ha'aretz v'yom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad.
We'll read together the bottom two paragraphs on page 103 in English. You may be seated.
At
dawn I seek you, refuge, rock sublime. My morning prayers I offer, and those at evening time. I tremble in your awesome presence contrite, for my deepest secrets lie stripped before your sight. My tongue, what can it say? My heart, what can it do? What is my strength? What is my spirit too? But should music be sweet to you in mortal key, your praises will I sing so long as breaths in me. We continue on page 104.
Nishmat kol chai tevaret im shich Adonai Eloheinu. Nachal elcha, unshabechacha, umfaracha, umfarech et shem kodsha, ka'amur leDavid, barchi nafshi et Adonai, v'chol karavai et shem kadsho. Ha'el b'tasut, uzecha hagadol b'chod shemecha, hagibor lenetzach v'henora v'norotecha, Hamelech v'yoshev al kisei ramva nisa.
Yasher Koach, the Fel Bloom, from leading us in the Birchot HaShachar and the Pesukei de Zimra. Begin the introduction to the Shachrit service in the middle of page 105 with Chazan Jonathan Schultz.
Shochenad marom megano shema lechatu v'radenu tzadikim baronai laisharim nava tehila v'yisharim titalav u'divrei tzadikim tiparach u'virshon chasim titromam u'v'kerev kedoshim Titkatash Umachalot Rilot
Amcha Beit Yisrael
Shekin Chovat Kohai Tzripanecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Lehodol Lehalel Leshabeach Lefael Lamed Lehalel Levarech Lealeh Ulekales David ben Yishai,
We rise, page 106.
Berachot vehodot me'ata me'ad olam Baruch atah Adonai El melech gadol hatishbachot El ha'odot Adonai niflot Hamoher b'shirei
Amen. Amen. Esmera bevorach leolam olam ne'omayam.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפרץ וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה שמרי קודשה בריחו לעילה וקומגתה ושירתה קדוש בגתה ונחמתה דמירה מעלמה ואמרו
Amen. The call to worship, page 107.
אין קרקע קרנה אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין תזונתם מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס בדרגו עלינו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך בושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון
על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גדול בטובו מלא עולם דעת ותבונה, סובבים אותו המתגאה על חיות הקודש, ונדרך אור על הנחמה, זכות ומישור לפני חיסור, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאוד שברא אלוהינו, צרם בדעת בבינה ומשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות נושאים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ופריקים נוגה, נעזים עד מבוא העולם, שמחים בצאתם, מששים בבואם, עושים בהם ארצות קונם. הערך עוד נותנים לשמו, צורה ורינה וזכר מלכותו, קרא לשמש ויזרחו, ראה והתקין צורת הבנה, שבח נותנים לו קוצב העם, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ויומנים, חיות הקודש, יא לילה לילה, יא לילה לילה, יא לילה 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 לילה, יא לילה לילה, יא לילה לילה, יא לילה 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 לילה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה.
לילה של שבת מכל המעשים.
תתברך צמאינו מלכנו ולאלוהינו והקדושים ישמו. כולם
אהובים, כולם מרורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים במאמירה רצון כולם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושת התורה.
מנציחים את שם האל המלך, חנון הגיבור ונורא, קדוש הוא.
וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להגיש יוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה מרוממים הקדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה,
קדוש, קדוש, קדוש,
אדוני
צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו.
באבנים וחיות הקודש, בראש גדול, מנסים לצרפים, ליומתה בשבחים ואומרים,
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
אור חדש
של ציון תאיר, אור חדש של ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו,
מהרה
לאורון.
ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות, אהבה רבה
אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה וצרה אמרת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, עבור אבותינו,
שבחנו בך, שבחנו בך,
אבינו מלכנו,
בתלמדנו
כחיים, כן תכוננו ותמתנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, הרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בלבנו להבין, אבינו השכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. הערנו בתורתך ודבק לבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי לשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, בהביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו כה במהירות, כה במיון לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בהרת בכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמע גדול, לשמע גדול של האמת, להודות לך ולייעך ולייעך באהבה.
ברוך אתה אדוני, עמוקנו ישראל,
Page 112.
שמע
ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבודו.
ואהבת
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והאיר תותפות בין עיניך ובטחתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Adonai Elohim Emet. Ledor vador kaimus makayam gisona holma kadam monatala kayamet. Rahayim kayamim yonim na'ar olame olamim. Emet shatahu Elohim Eloheinu Malkeinu melech avotenu Go'aleinu go'el avotenu Yotrenu tzor yeshuateinu Vodenu matzil
מעולם שמך
Elohim zulatecha
עזרת אבותינו So we continue on page 114 in the blessing before the Amidah. After we sing Michamocha, we rise and take time for our personal prayer, giving thanks for the special and unique gift of Shabbat, remembering the holiness of rest. Ma'elim Adonai, mi chamocha, ne'er b'kodesh, norat ilot tosefele, shira chadasha, shiru gehulim, leshimcha sfatayam, yachad kulam odumim licho ve'amru. Adonai Eloch le'olam va'ed. Sur Yisrael, kuma ve'ezrat Yisrael, uftek lecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, go'aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shema. finished our personal prayer, we turn to page 115b for the repetition.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei Avoteinu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel, Elokei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, V'zocher chastei avot, U'mevii goranim nebneihem, Leman shemo ve'ahava. Melech ozer fokel Moshiach u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Magen Avraham, u'foked Sarah.
Amen.
Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, v'chayim mikyemat harav lehoshia. Mashiach ruach, morid
Hashem,
mechakel
Elohim b'chesed, Mechayim metim berachamim rabim,
Somech noflim ונופך חולים, ומציל אסורים, ומקיים
אמונתו לשני עפר, כמוך בעל גבורות, ומילו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישובם.
ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני,
ושמו.
בחיי המתים. נגלה שתשמע בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב בים למיך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו. אז מכל אשקלון אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, אז מכל אשקלון אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים להומת סרפים, מתנסים להומת סרפים, מתנסים להומת סרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו. במקום חמקנו, מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. במקום חמקנו, מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. תמלוך בציון, מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב ימינו, בקרוב ימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון, בקרוב ימינו, בקרוב ימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון, תתגלה ותתקדש, בקרוב ותתקדש, בתוך ירושלים, ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לנצח נצחים, לדור ודור, לנצח נצחים, בעינינו תיראנה, תיראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור
Amen. You may be seated. The repetition continues, page 117.
Yismach, Yismach Moshe, Matanachecha, Ki Ele Neman, Kavatalo, Kli Tiferet, Perosho Natata, Be'omeno Lefanecha, Ar Sinai, Usenelu Chotamarim, Horid Meyado, V'chaduf, v'chatum b'hem shemirat Shabbat, v'chein katuv b'toratecha. V'shameu b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ולא נתתו לאלוהינו לגוי הארצות, ולא יגדל מלכנו לבני מסילים, וגם במיוחדו ישכנו ערלים, כי לשם חנתתו באהבה, לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת. מקדשי שמי, כולם יספו מאיתנו מתליך, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו. חמדת ימים אותות קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך ותברכנו בתורתך. שמנו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך, בטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון, שבת קודשך וידוכו בישראל, מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני להרמק וישראל לתהילתם אשר תמנה למלמדך, ותהילתם בבתכם במרצון ותירצות עמנו עבדי ישראל עמך. ותחסד עינינו בשוב קיצים ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שקינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך. הטוב כי נוכל רחמך, ואמרה כי נותן פסריך, מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברכתי תורה משל מלכנו, תמיד אלון בהן, וכל החיים ינגסה לך, והללו את שירה באמת, הישועתנו בעזרתנו סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות. אלוהינו, אלוהי אבותינו, ברכנו בברכה המשולשת, בתורה קדומה ידי משה עבדך, המורה מפי אהרון ובניו, כהנים, עם קדושך כאמור. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. שים שלום בעולם טוב וברכה, כמו גזר רחם ועלים וכל ישראל עמך, ברכנו מן כל ענקי חמי פניך, כי מאור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, תורת חיים וחסד, וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום. וטוב בעיניך לברכת עמך ישראל ולא עד ולא שעם משלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך לבוא ישראל בשלום.
Amen. Kaddish Shalem, page 138.
יתקרב יקנה השם ברמה,
Amen.
בעלמא תברכנותי וימליך מלכותי מלכי כל הגויים בישראל, בגלה וזנקרי ואמרו
Amen. ישמר אבא מבורך, לעולם לעולם יתברך.
יתברך וישמח ויתרומי נעשה מן אדם ויתעלה ותעלה, שבי לגונשה
ברכו.
לאלה מכל מגעתה ושירתה, תזמגעתה ונגמתה, דמי רמי עלמה, ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צמרת עודנה ישראל, קודם אבון וישמעיה, ואמרו
Amen.
יהי שלום רבה משמעיה, בחיים עלינו מעל כל ישראל, ואמרו
Amen.
עושה שלום בברומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו
Amen. The service to take out our Torah this morning begins page 139.
אין כמוך לאלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך
מלכות עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
אדוני
מלך
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh.
God Elok Adonai iti, Olero Mema Shemo Yachdav.
הגדולה והגרורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד ככל השמיים המלך והמקדשי בכל הראש רוממו רוממו אדוני It's not here. Here you go. I'm just on the side. I'm reading the first Elias. What? I'm reading the first Elias. Oh, zippy doo. Okay.
What was that from?
What is that?
That's the, I bought one extra one.
Oh.
So, and the other one's from some other toy, I guess.
You may be seated. We are reading this morning a good page number, page 613. We are reading Parshat Tzav. I will say the Parsha is focused on a lot of the details of the sacrifices and dedicating the Mishkan for the practice of the sacrifices. So it can be a little bit challenging, but we do have, towards the end, in the sixth Aliyah, it talks a little bit about the mincha offering and the basket of unleavened bread that was before the Lord, that he took one cake of unleavened bread and a cake of oil bread and a wafer and pushed them with the fat parts and the thighs. The offerings to God were always unleavened. There was the showbread up front that was leavened bread, but what was always offered to God was actually unleavened. So God, in a way, celebrates Passover all year round. We can talk more about that in a little while, and I don't have a formal drash this morning. My focus was to talk a little bit about Pesach based around questions that you have. So as you read this week's Parsha, you can also think about anything you haven't thought about yet with Pesach that you want to bring up for conversation. So page 613, and this is also Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat before Passover.
V'yazor v'yagin v'yashel l'chol chosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol avu godel Eloheinu nuchavod l'Torah Yamod Moshe Eliezer Ben Mordechai Abraham HaKohen L'Aliyah HaRishona Baruch Shenatan Torah L'Am Yisrael B'Kedushato
V'yetem havim hayom hayom.
V'atem ha'vekim b'Adonai Elohechem Chaim kolchem hayom.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vo'ed Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Nasan Lanu Eser Asar Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen. V'yedaber Adonai Moshe lemor tzav el Aharon v'et banav lemor zo Torah ha'olah hi ha'olah ha'mukdal mizbeach ha'halayla ad haboker ואש המזבח תוקד בו לבש הכהן מדוב ונכנסי וילבש על בשרו ורים את הדשן אשר תאכל האש את העולה על המנחה ושמו על מזבח ושמו אצל המזבח ופשט את בגדיו ולבש בגדים אחרים והוציא את הדשן אל מחוץ למחנה למקום טהור האש על מזבח תוקד בו ולא תכבה ובאר עליה הכהן עצים בבוקר וערך עליך העולה והתיר עליך חלבי השלמים אש תמיד תוקד על המזבח לא תכבה וזו תורה מנחה הקרב אותה בארון לפני אדוני על פני המזבח וממנו בקומצו מסולת המנחה ומשמנה לאר כל העוונה אשר המנחה והקטיר המזבח ריח ניחוח אזכרתה לאדוני ונותרת ממנו יאכלו אהרון ובניו מצות תאכל במקום קדוש בחצר אוכל מועד יאכלוה לא תהפך חמץ חלקם נתתי אותם מישי קודש קודשים היא כחטאת האשם כל זכר בבני אהרון יאכלנה חוק עולם לדורותיכם מישי אדוני כה אשר ייגע בהם יקדש.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Nasan Lanu Torah Sames V'chai Olam L'tav B'Socheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah. Amen.
Amen. We will pause for Misha Berach. If you have a name of anyone who is ill, please rise. Misha Berach, Avotenu Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachav Leha, Yivaref Yirpet HaCholim.
Ted Kay, Marty Bilo, Shirley Isaacson.
Yehudit Mendel, Barak ben Sarfredo, Miriam bat Chasya, Chaim ben Rivka, Batsheva bat Sarah, Helen Dabalski, Michael Verdorat, Jacoba bat Chana, Alyssa Mason, Arthur Schneider bat Tisha, Moshe ben Yosef, Sabrina Lustigman, Miriam bat Chalevi, Gregory Shannon, Margie Mitchell, Ellen O'Keefe, Golda Esther, Shimon, Avram ben Esther, Chaya bat Tova, Jeff Deneman, Bela bat Chana, Manish ben Yosef, Miriam, Malchi bat Yehutit, Ruth bat Malka, Sarah bat Zipporah, Yehuda Fega bat Rivka, Menachem Mendel ben Yudit, Chaya Tikva bat Bela Shina, Jeff College, Richard Roger, Shammai ben Zipporah, Paul Rosenblum, Rosalie White, Anthony Gamboa, Lisa ben Milton, Yitzhak ben Sima, Rachel bat Rachel, Brenda bat Devorah, Hannah Fisher, Judy Elson, Miriam Freda bat Sarah, Shana bat Sarah, Richard Polsky, Valerian Parker, Mordechai ben Lesser David, Russia bat Sarah, Pesach ben Itka, Chaim Gershon ben Duba, Yudit bat Alas, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu Yemarach HaMelechem, Lazik HaMuvatam, Rishlach Lehem Meher Arafo Shem Min Shemayim, Uvot HaNefesh V'Tagov, B'Tok Shar Chalim, B'Ezek Edesim B'Tzarchechem, Shabbat Tim Azok Rav Kavo, Hashem Asman Karib, and Omar, Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Becca, Rachel, and Leah, bring a complete healing to all those in need of healing, and bring strength and comfort to those who care for them today and every day. Amen.
Amen. Before Shlema. Yamad.
Yechiel ben David.
Yechiel ben David, Leah Hashniya. Secondly, we get to page 615, chapter 6, verse 12.
Baruch Hu es Adonai HaMavarach. Baruch Adonai HaMavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu es Torah so. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vadaber Adonai al Moshe Lemor. Zeh korban Aharon uvanav asher yakribu l'Adonai. B'yom Yomashach oto asirit Haifa solet minchat tamid. Machatzita baboker umachatzita ba'arev. Amachavat b'shemen tesem murbechet Vienna. Tufine minchat pitim. Takriv reach nichoach l'Adonai. B'kohen hamashiach tachtav. Yibanav yasa otah. Chok olam l'Adonai kalil taktar. B'chol minchat kohen. Kalil tiyeh lo teachel. V'daber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber al Aharon v'al banav lemor. Zo Torah hachatat. Bimkom asher tishachet ha'olah. Tishachet hachatat lifnei Adonai. Kodesh kodeshim hi. HaKohen hamachatei ota yochalana. B'makom kadosh teachel. B'chatzar ohel moed. Kol asher yiga b'vsara yikdash. V'asher yizeh midam al habeged. Asher yizeh leha. Techabes b'makom kadosh. Uchli cheres. Asher tivushal bo yishaber. V'im bechli nechoshet bushala. Umorak v'shutaf b'mayim. Kol zachar b'kohanim yochal ata. Kodesh kodeshim hi. B'chol chatat asher yidva midama. Elo hel moed l'chaper b'kodesh l'teachel. Ba'esh tisarev. V'zo Torah ha'asham. Kodesh kodeshim hu. Bimkom asher yishchatu et ha'olah. Yishchatu et ha'asham. V'tamo yizrok al hamizbeach saviv. V'et kochel bo yakriv mimenu. Et ha'alya. V'achelev ha'mechaseh et ha'kerev. V'et shtei ha'kelayot. V'achelev asher aleihen asher al ha'kesalim. V'ayoteret al ha'kaved al ha'kelayot yisirana. V'hiktir otam ha'kohen hamizbecha. Isha l'Adonai, Asham hu. כל זכר בכהנים יאכלנו במקום קדוש יאכל קודש קודשים הוא. כחטאת כשם תורה אחת להם הכהן אשר יכפר בו לא יהיה. והכהן המקריב את עולת איש או העולה אשר הקריב לכהן לא יהיה. וכל מנחה אשר תיאפה בתנור וכל נעשה במרחשת ועל מרחבת לכהן המקריב אותה לא תהיה. וכל מנחה בלולה בשמן וחריבה לכל בני אהרון תהיה איש כאחיו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמס וחיי רוחם נתן בסכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נושא התורה.
Amen. Yamod. Zeb ben Shlomo, the Aliyah Shlishit, third Aliyah, is on page 617, chapter 7, verse 11.
Baruch hu Adonai Hambarach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'zo Torah zavach hashelamim asher yakriv la'Adonai imal todah yakrivenu v'kriv al zavach hatodah chalot matzot belulot v'shemen urkikei matzot meshuchim v'shemen v'solet murbachet chalot belulot v'shemen Achalot lechem chamech yakriv korbano al zavach todat shlamav v'kriv mimanu echad mikol korban truma ladonoi lakohen hazoreg et dam hashalamim lo yeh uvesar zavach todat shlamav v'yom korbano yachel lo yaniach mimanu ad boker Vim neder o nedava, zavach korbano, biyom hakrivo et zivcho yeachel, umimacharat, banotar mimenu yeachel, banotar mivsar hazavach, bayom hashalishi, baesh yisaref, v'im hachol yeachel, מבשר זבח שלמיו ביום השלישי לא ירצה המקריב אותו לא יחשב לא פיגול יהיה והנפש האוכלת ממנו עוונה תישא והבשר אשר ייגע בכל טמא לא יאכל באש ישרף והבשר כל טהור יאכל בשר, והנפש אשר תאכל בשר, מזבח השלמים אשר לאדוני, וטומאתו עליו, ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מימיה, ונפש כי תיגע בכל טמא, בטומאת אדם או בבהמה טמאה או בכל שקץ טמא ואכל מבשר זבח השלמים אשר לאדוני ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מימיה ודבר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור כל חלב שור וחסב ועז לא תאכלו וחלב נבלה וחלב טרפה יעשה לכל מלאכה ואכל לא תאכלוהו כי כל אוכל חלב מן הבהמה אשר יקריב ממנו אישה לאדוני והנכרתה הנפש האוכלת מימיها. וכל דם לא תאכלו בכל מושבותיכם, לעוף ולבהמה. וכל נפש אשר כל נפש אשר תאכל, כל נפש אשר תאכל כל דם, ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מימיה. ודבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור, המקריב את זבח שלמיו לאדוני, יביא קורבנו לאדוני מזבח שלמיו. ידיו תביאנה את אישי אדוני, את החלב על החזה יביאנו, את החזה להניף אותו, תנופה לפני אדוני. והקטיר הכהן את החלב המזבחה, והיה החזה לאהרון ולבניו. ואת שוק הימים תיתנו תרומה לכהן, מזבחי שלמיכם, המקריב את דם השלמים ואת החלב מבני אהרון, לא תהיה שוק הימים למנה. כי את חזה התנופה ואת שוק התרומה לקחתי מאת בני ישראל מזבחי שלמיהם, ואתן אותם לאהרון הכהן ולבניו לחוק עולם מאת בני ישראל. זאת משחת אהרון ומשחת בניו מאישי אדוני, ביום הקריב אותם לכהן לאדוני, אשר ציווה אדוני לתת להם ביום משכו אותם מאת בני ישראל, חוקת עולם לדורותם. זאת התורה למנחה ולחטאת ולאשם ולמילואים ולזבח השלמים, אשר ציווה אדוני את משה בהר סיני ביום צוותו את בני ישראל להקריב את קורבניהם לאדוני במדבר סיני.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם לכבנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן תורה.
Amen. תעמוד רות בת אברהם אבינו ושרה לעלייה הרביעית. Fourth Aliyah begins on page 621, chapter 8, verse 1.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'daber Adonai el Moshe לאמור, קח את אהרון ובניו איתו, ואת הבגדים, ואת שמן המשחה, ואת פר החטאת, ואת שני העלים, ואת צל המצות, וכל העדה הקהל אל פתח אוהל מועד. ויעש משה כאשר ציווה אדוני אותו, ותקהל העדה אל פתח אוהל מועד. ויאמר משה אל העדה, זה הדבר אשר ציווה אדוני לעשות. ויקרב משה את אהרון ואת בניו, ורחץ אותם במים, ויתן עליו את הכותונת, ויחגור אותו באבנד, וילבש אותו את המעיל, ויתן עליו את האפוד, ויחגור אותו בחשב האפוד, ויפוד לו בו, וישם עליו את החושן, ויתן אל החושן את האורים ואת התומים, Vayasem el hamitznefed al rosho. Vayasem el hamitznefed el mul panav. Eitzit hazahav nezer hakodesh kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. Vayikach Moshe et shemen hamishcha vayimshach et hamishkan v'kol asher bo vayikadesh otam. Vayaz mimenu al hamizbeach shava pamim. Vayimshach al hamizbeach v'kol kelav v'rekior v'kano lekadesham. Vayitzok mishemen hamishcha al rosh Aharon. Vayimshach oto lekadesho. Vayikrev Moshe et bnei Aharon. Val b'shem kutanot v'achgor otam avneit v'chavosh lahem migbaot kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata b'toheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amod. Mordechai. Zion. Ben Elimelech. Ben Esamani.
Ben Esamani, Eliah Hamishit. Fifth Aliyah begins on page 622, chapter 8, verse 14.
Baruch Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Barach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayesh eight par-hachatat. Vayismoch Aaron uvanav et yedehem al rosh par-hachatat. Vayishchad vayikach Moshe et hadam. Vayiten al karnot hamizbeach saviv beyatzpao. Vaychate et hamizbeach. Et hadam yatzak al yesod hamizbeach. Vayikadeshehu l'chaper alav. Vayikach ekol hachelev asher al hakerev. V'yei yoter et hakaved. V'shtei hakelayot v'chal behen. Vayikter Moshe hamizbecha. Et hapar v'et oro v'et besaro v'et pirsho saraf ba'esh michutz lamachaneh kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. Vayikrev eight el ha'olah vayismechu Aharon uvanav et yedehem al rosh ha'ayil. Vayishchat vayizrok Moshe et hadam al mizbeach saviv. V'et ha'ayil nitach lintachav. Vayikter Moshe et harosh v'et nitachim v'et hapader. V'akerev v'et hakeraim rachatz b'mayim. Vayikter Moshe kol ha'ayil hamizbecha. Olahu l'reach nichoach ishahu l'Adonai kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amod. Yaakov ben Yitzchak. Leah Hashishit. The sixth Aliyah is found on page 623, chapter 8, verse 22.
Baruch Adonai hamborach.
Baruch Adonai
Barach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayakrev et ha'el hasheni el hamiluim. Vayismechu Aharon uvanav et yedehem al rosh ha'ayil. Vayishchat. Vayikach Moshe midamo. Vaytein al tenuch ozen Aharon hayemanit. Val bohen yado hayemanit. Val bohen raglo hayemanit. Vayakrev et bnei Aharon. Vayitein Moshe min hadam al tanuch oznam hayemanit, val bohen yadam hayemanit, val bohen raglam hayemanit. Vayzrok Moshe et hadam al mizbeach saviv. Vayikach et achelev vet hal al yah, vekol achelev asher al kerev, v'et yoter et hakaved, vet shtei hakalayot v'chal behen, v'et shok hayamin, umisal hamatzot asher lifnei Adonai, lakach chalot matzah achat v'chalot lachem shemen achat v'rakik echad v'yasem al hachalavim v'al shok hayamin v'yitein et hakol al kapei Aharon v'al kapei banav v'yanef otam tenufa lifnei Adonai v'ykach Moshe otam me'al kapeihem Vakter hamizbecha al ha'olah miluim heim l'reach nichoach ishahu la'adonai Vakach Moshe et hechazeh vayenifehu tenufa lifnei Adonai me'el hamiluim l'Moshe haya lemana kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Yamod. Ruvain Benusha. Yahya Hashvi'it, 7th Leah is found on page 624, chapter 8, verse 30. Baruch Adonai Mevarach. Baruch Adonai Mevarach Le'olam. Baruch Adonai Mevarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Vayikach Moshe mishemen hamishcha umin adam asher al mizbeach vayaz al Aharon al begadav v'banav v'bigdei banav ito vaykadesh al Aharon et begadav v'banav et bigdei banav ito Vayomer Moshe el Aharon vel banav Bashalu et habasar Petach ohel moed V'sham tochalu oto Ve'ed halachem asher B'sal hamiluim Kasher v'ti lemor Aharon uvanav yochaluhu Banotar babasar uvalachem Ba'esh tisrofu Umipetach ohel moed lo tetzeu shivat yamim ad yom melod yemei milu'echem ki shivat yamim yemalei et yetchem kasher asa bayom hazeh tziva Adonai lasot lechaper alechem ufetach ohel moed Teshavu yomam v'alayla shivat yamim ushmartem et mishmeret Adonai v'lo tamutu ki chen suveiti vayas Aharon uvanav eit kol hadvarim asher tziva Adonai be'ad Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hu olam atah b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. Amen. Please rise for Hatzikah.
Mi sheberach Avitin Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarav Karachav Leah Yivarach Kol HaKruim Asher alu hayom l'chvod hamakam v'l'chvod haTorah v'l'chvod haShabbat u'b'zchar HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivrachatam v'yimshpechotam mishlach bracha b'atzacha b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem v'por tzlacheihem v'nomar
Amen.
Yikada v'yikada shemei Rabbah v'yama divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon yom echad Moed Yisrael. Bagala, Bagala, Ubizman Korev, Bimeru, Amen. Ishme Rabba Mevorach, Leolam Lamel Maya. Yibarach, Vishtabach, Viparvitamam, Vidnase, Vidhadar, Vidalev, Vidhalal, Shmei Kudsha. Leila Mikol Berchata V'Shirata, Tushmechata V'Nehemata, Tamiran Me'alma, Bimeru, Amen.
Seated. Yamod, Harav, Feigl, Herschel ben Chaim Gershon, Behudit Leah, Maftir Liaison, Pana, page 624, chapter 8, verse 33.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Nevarach Leolam Vahed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'Natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Mipetach Ohel Moed Lo Tetzeu Shivat Yamim Ad Yom Melot Yemei Miluechem Ki Shivat Yamim Yemalei Et Yedchem Kasher Asa Bayom Hazet Siva Adonai Lasot Lechaper Alechem Ufetach Ohel Moed Teshavu Yomam Balayla Shivat Yamim Ushmartem Mishmeret Adonai Velo Tamutu Ki Chen Suveti Vayas Aharon Uvanav Eit Kol HaDevarim Asher Tziva Adonai Be'ad Moshe.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet V'Hei Olam Nata B'Tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
So before we lift and dress the Torah, it is somebody's birthday today. So I thought I would do our Simcha blessing right now. So if you also have a birthday or a celebration this month, I invite you to rise. Mishaberach Avotenu Amitzak V'Kol V'Sar Rivka Rachel V'Leah. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless all who have come today to celebrate, to be called to the Torah, to celebrate Shabbat, and to come together in joy and blessing. And may we have not just a day or a week or a month, but a year of blessing for us all, a time of peace and harmony, filled with many acts of Gemilut Chasadim, many acts of loving kindness. And may we all find shleimut, may we find wholeness today and every day. Siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov. Yehelanu, 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 Olechol Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Olechol Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Olechol Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Olechol Yisrael.
Please rise and lift and bind the Sefer Torah. Yamdu, Hamazbiya, Hakolelet.
You may be seated. As I mentioned, this Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol. The Haftarah is a special one for this Shabbat before Pesach on page 1296. And there's a number of explanations why we call this Shabbat Hagadol. One is because this Haftarah is a strong message of redemption, and so it is great because it declares accountability and responsibility. Another one is, in the days before the modern rabbi, the last generations of rabbis spent most of their time in the Beit Midrash, and they did not spend that much time in the pulpit. There were 2 times a year when rabbis traditionally gave a sermon, on Shabbat Hagadol and on Shabbat Shuvah. I don't know who spoke the rest of the time. Maybe they just davened. But, so there's a humorist from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, who said, that it was great because the rabbi was speaking, but it could also have been considered gadol because it was a very, very, very long sermon, and so the day felt stretched and felt so gadol because the rabbi wouldn't stop talking. We can debate on exactly what makes today great, but overall, that this Haftarah has the people claiming the context before Malachi, the verses before is Malachi, that some of the people were saying that basically there is no justice in this world, and we can do whatever we want, and we can ignore all of the Torah, and God is not going to do anything about this. And so this Haftarah is, in a way, a response to this and saying, no, guys, there are actually consequences to your actions. So the Haftarah is, again, page 1296. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nbiim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem, הנאמרים באמת ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו צועל עמו בנביאמת והצדק וערבה לאדוני מנחה יחודה וירושלים כימי עולם וכשנים קדמוניות וקרבתי עליהם למשפט והייתי עד ממחר, ממכשפים ומנאפים ומנשפעים לשקר ובושקי שכר סקיר אלמנה ויתום התגר ולא ירוני אמר אדוני צבאות כי אני אדוני לא שניתי Ve'atem b'nei Yaakov lo kalitem. I am the Lord, I have not changed, you are still the children of Jacob, you have not ceased to be. Lesson for then and for now. V'imei avotechem sartem ukei v'lo shmartem shuvu elai v'ashuva olechem amar Adonai tzvaot v'amartem b'men nashum Haying ba'adam Elohim ki atem kvoim oti ve'amartem ba'mekvav nucha ha'maser v'atrumam ba'm'era atem narim v'oti atem kovim ha'goy kulo הביאו את כל המעשר את בית האוצר ויתר בביתי ובחנוני נא בזאת אמר אדוני צבאות אם לא אבטח לכם את ערובות השמיים ורקותי לכם ברכה עד בלי די וגרעתי לכם באוכל ולא ישחית לכם את פרי אדמה, ולא תשחרר לכם הגפן בסתר, אמר אדוני צבאות. ואישרו אתכם כל הגויים, כי תהיו אתם ארץ חפץ, אמר אדוני צבאות. הוסקו עלי דבריהם, אמר אדוני, ואמרתם, מה נדברנו עליך? אמרתם שב עבוד אלוהים ומה בצע כי שמרנו משמרתו וכי הלכנו כדורנית מבני אדוני צבאות ועתה אנחנו משריט זדים גם נבנו עושי רשע גם בחנו אלוהים וימלטו אז נדברו יראי אדוני ישתרכו והקשב אדוני וישמע וייכתב ספר זיכרון לפניו יראי אדוני ולחושבי שמו ויולני אמר אדוני צבאות להיום אשר אני עושה סגולה אמרתי עליהם כאשר יחמול איש על בנו העובד אותו ושבתם הוריתם בין צדיק לרשע בין עובד אלוהים לאשר לא עבדו כי הנה היום בא בוער כתנור והיו כל זדים וכל עושה רשע קש ולכת אותם היום הבא אמר אדוני צבאות אשר לא יעזוב להם שורש וענם בזרח לכם יראה שמי שמש דקה ומרפא בכנפיה ויצאתם ופשתם כגלי מרבק ועשותם רשעים כי יהיו אפר תחת כפות רגליהם ביום אשר אני עושה אמר אדוני צבאות זכרו תורת משה עבדי אשר ציוויתי אותו בחורב על כל ישראל ומשפטים הנה אנוכי שולח לכם את אליה הנביא לפני בוא יום אדוני הגדול והנורא ושיב לבבו על בנים ולבנים על אבותם פן אבוא והכיתי את הארץ חרם הנה אנוכי שולח לכם את אליה הנביא לפני בוא יום אדוני הגדול והנורא ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם צור כל העולמים צדיק וכל הדורות אלא נאמן אומר ועושה המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו במבט צדק נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ונאמנים דבריך ודבר אחד מדבריך וכל רשוף ריקם כי המלך נאמן רחמן אתה ברוך אתה אדוני היי נאמן בכל דבריו רחם על ציון כי ביתנו ולנפש תושיע במהרה בימינו ברוך אתה אדוני משמח ציון בבניך שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך ומלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו על כיסאו לא ישב שר ולא ינהל עוד ההרים כבודו כי בשם קדשך נשבעת לו שלא יקבנהו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה והנביאים ביום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמה בפי כל עת תמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Baruch Tiyah. We continue with a prayer for our community, page 148.
Yekum Borkan Min Shemaya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishalem Sagaram V'yasir Mehem Kol Machala V'yirpa Lechol Gufam V'yishlach Lechol Avonam
V'yishlach V'racha V'atzlacha V'chol Maaseh for the prayer for our country, page 148. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and the free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore, and let us say, Amen. Page 149, the prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Shebashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'goalo, Barek et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Kulatenu. Hagen alecha befrat hazdecha, ufros alecha suchat shlomecha, ushlach orcha v'mitcha lerashecha, sarecha v'atzecha, v'taknim be'etzah tova milfanecha. Hazek et yidei mignei eretz kadshenu, vanhilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'ateret netzachon teatrem, v'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam noshva, v'nomar Amen. You may be seated. We continue with Ashrei, page 151.
Ashrei Ashrei V'techa, od yadadu chasena. Tehillat Adonai naver, Pigi Marech, Chomos Oshim Akshel Amaen, V'anach Nevarech Ya, Me'ata V'yad Olam, Hallelujah.
We rise to return the Torah to the Ark, page 153.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, Ki niskav Shemo Levado.
ויפסום ירוץ ובהגלה כולה מכבוד אדוני למעמו ישב וישב אדוני מלך לעולם אדוני עוזר עמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום ובנך יאמר שמר נאמרותה בישראל כי לך טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזבו את חייבי למחזיקים בה בתוך טבע מאושר
seated. So before going into Pesach, I just want to acknowledge the interesting world we live in. If you've noticed the news out of Israel the last few weeks, things have been, we'll say, complicated, and you've had something almost nearly 10% of the Israeli population protesting on a regular basis proposed judicial reforms from the current government of Israel. Now, Israel has they have what's called basic laws, but they do not have a constitution. And my prayer that coming out of all of this is that perhaps an actual constitution will be written for the land of Israel that will help create a little more peace and stability within the political system there. Israel has not had any problem previously arresting prime ministers after their term of office and even sentencing them to jail for corruption in the office of the prime minister. I would not argue that there needs to be some judicial reform, but the particular path that is currently going on to perhaps exempt a acting prime minister from having the potential to be arrested in the future, that might be going a bit too far. But I'll let the Israeli scholars and the Israeli legalists go into exactly where the line should be drawn and how many seats get to overrule a decision of the Supreme Court. But to me, it's a sign of a healthy democracy that people are taking their voices and letting them be heard. And I will acknowledge, other signs, hopefully, of a healthy democracy in our own country. As I just said, in Israel, we've had absolutely no issue arresting former prime ministers. So now we have the first time in history of, a former president facing court for corruption and other charges. We will survive this. And I'm sure there are many people that are ecstatic to see a former president indicted, and there are many people saying, oy vavoy, how could we possibly get it to this point? I'm not making an opinion here. I'm just saying that many countries have not only survived, but thrived after arresting significant figures. And our Torah itself, our Psalms every Friday night talk about Moses, Aaron, and Samuel, who are, a position of leadership does not exempt you from the moral code or does not exempt you from the laws. It actually holds you to a higher standard. And that is as far as I'm going to go with that. So now, let's talk about Pesach. As I said, it was traditional on Shabbat HaGadol for rabbis to come and remind you of the laws of Pesach and how to prepare for Pesach. which says something very interesting. Shabbat HaGadol can fall as early as like that night or the next day is Pesach, which means that cleaning for Pesach in different generations did not require, weeks of preparation and buying, 400 new processed products from the kosher market. In previous generations, Passover did not have many products you could buy in a store. You started with fruits and vegetables, and at a certain point, people actually made their own matzah. There's a very interesting essay in here, which we have copies out there, and we've got more copies in the back if anyone wants. There's a very interesting essay. I think I mentioned it before about the benefits of machine matzah. Did I mention this before? Okay. So they have an article here by Yitzhak Bronstein about when machine matzah came to be. It started before electricity in Manischewitz. There was a patent in the 1860s, and suddenly matzah became much more affordable. But there was a problem, because how did many poor people get their sustenance for Pesach? The poorest in the community were the ones who were the matzah bakers. And, I don't know what they did the rest of the year, but that week, that was sort of their income for much of the year, was making the matzah for Pesach. And it wasn't cheap. So now we have a problem, or we have a blessing. From the consumer perspective, matzah is now much more affordable, and people could have matzah not only at the Seder, but have enough matzah for all of Pesach. But for the poor people who were previously earning their entire living or a good part of their living on the week going into Pesach, they've now lost their entire source of income. And the rabbis had major debates and articles in journals and different things about whether it was a good thing or a bad thing to have this new affordable machine matzah. Some even suggested we put a tax on machine matzah to then supply extra tzedakah for those who previously had that income. The little protectionist economy. But this is conversations of what is the best options for Pesach are not new problems. They've been going around for a very, very, very long time. And I was listening to also from Machon Hadar in New York. They have what's called Responsa Radio. It's a podcast where Avi Killip and Rabbi Avi Killip and Rabbi Ethan Tucker, people call in with different questions, and then they research them and write them, and then prepare a little presentation of Torah on the issue. So they had a very interesting. I shared it yesterday. An interesting question was what happens. Most of us are here in this position where we have our own home, our own kitchen that we have control over. And we can kosher our kitchen to the extent that we desire. Hopefully that means, changing over our pots and pans and doing a thorough cleaning of our kitchen, at least. But what happens, if you are 20 years old and you are, coming home for college and you've become a little bit more observant and your parents don't really do Passover? What do? There is a command to honor your parents, but the command to honor your parents doesn't override other mitzvot. So what they said is there are leniencies and stringencies around everything, including Passover, and you can use certain leniencies to eat in your parents' home, but you can't eat chametz on Passover, period. There's not an exemption for that. So they were talking about, can you use, in an emergency or that kind of negotiated situation, could you use your parents' pots, but only use kosher for Passover things in those pots? And the answer was, in that situation, yes, but that's not a precedent to, say, I'm going to agree to this for 30 years, but, because in the future, you're a grown-up, so you buy a few pots and leave them at your parents' house, and those are the Passover pots. And some of us can be on the other side of that, with children who have different levels of observance than we may have. And how do we, create in our families? Because, if you're roommates, you can negotiate among roommates, but negotiations between parents and children on observance can become very, very fraught. Because especially, if you keep kosher and your kids come and say it's not kosher enough, well then you're hurt because I raised my kids to keep kosher, and then now they're saying my kosher is not kosher enough. What's going on out there? And there are opportunities for compromise if everyone's open to them. We'll put it that way. But you have to be willing to have a conversation. So do we have any Passover shailas, any questions that you've been wondering about? Yeah.
I was wondering if you could briefly explain how the Ashkenazi prohibition against kitniot came to be and how the recent CJLS Teshuvah allowing kitniot came to be.
Okay. So the first question is, what's kitniot? So kitniot are, rice and legumes, rice and beans, corn, and other things that did not, are not chametz, because the only thing that can become chametz by tradition is wheat, spelt, oats, rye, and barley. If it is not one of those things, it cannot be chametz. But there are other things that can appear like chametz. So Ashkenazi rabbis in the Middle Ages, looked at rice and they saw it swells up. Or they saw you could make rice flour and they said, how is this different from wheat flour? It could be used to make something, it looks enough like chametz that we just shouldn't eat it on Passover. And the other piece was certain, as crop rotation became a thing, there was a concern that certain, legumes and beans, could be grown on a field that were, previously a wheat or an oat field, and there could be the potential of having contamination in your rice or beans or whatever. Probably not the rice, because the rice are not going to, those needs a much wetter field. But it became a tradition for many years that Ashkenazi Jews did not eat these things on the fear that they could potentially appear like chametz. Now this is particularly challenging for vegetarians or vegans who that is their sources of protein, and therefore, what do you eat on Pesach if you can't eat all of those things? Nothing is the answer.
Eggs and cheese, eggs and cheese, eggs and cheese.
Well, but if you're a vegan, yeah. No eggs, no cheese. Now you're really stuck. So Sephardic Jews never had this prohibition. And then, of course, there were those weird edge cases like peanuts, that for generations and generations, nobody thought peanuts were kitniot, and then somehow in America, like in the 70s, people started flipping their minds on that. Peanuts are not kitniot. Green beans, I cannot for the life of me figure out how a string bean or a green bean, whatever you call it, could, it's green. How could you possibly think that this is a grain? It's not. It's not kitniot from my perspective. So the CJLS, well, first off, in Israel, Mizrahi Sephardic Jews are the majority. And so many years ago, Rabbi Galinkin in Israel said that, who was for many years the head of the Beit Din of the Masorti movement in Israel, and the Israeli Vada Halacha of the conservative movement, he said, if you're living in Israel, it can actually be very challenging to eat food without kitniot. Because if you go to the stores, and most mainstream grocery stores in Israel, they are forbidden from selling chametz on Passover, but they will sell kitniot, and products will say for kosher lepesach lekulam for everybody, or leochle kitniot, or for those who eat kitniot. And so yes, you can absolutely in Israel do what we do in this country and eat, limit yourself from Passover products, from processed products, and eat the basics, and live on the Atkins diet for a week, and matzah, and not eat kitniot. But more and more processed kosher for Passover products in Israel had le'ochle kitniot. And so he said look, the majority in our community here is actually Mizrahi. We are holding on to a stringency that really has very little basis in modern reality with the, not the FDA in Israel, but, with governmental regulations and kashrut inspectors, we can know what's actually in our products. And therefore, we can know that if it says la'ochle kitniot, there is no contamination from wheat, spelt, oats, rye, or barley. And therefore, it is truly kosher for Passover for everyone. So that was his argument 30 years ago. And one of my colleagues who's been in Atlanta for many years wrote a paper, a private responsa for vegetarians. He's been a vegan for 50 years. And he said, look, if you're a vegan, you're a vegetarian, you really should accept that the prohibition of kitniot was a stringency of our ancestors based on mostly, mistaken reasoning, like rice is not chametz. It doesn't, when it expands this much, it's not yeast, it's not growing that way. It is just, you add water, it gets a little bit bigger. And he followed Golinkin, who Golinkin has if you go to responsa for today.com, you can find his tshuva in English and Hebrew, and it goes through like 25 different reasons of how the rabbis in the Middle Ages thought that kitniot could potentially be a problem, and then 25 reasons why they were wrong every time. And therefore that it really was acceptable. And so just a few years ago, the CJLS sort of took Golinkin's paper, reevaluated it for America, and said, yes, you could eat kitniot, but, if you're a conservative Jew. The but is, in this country, we do not have the vast majority of, hechshered for Passover with kitniot products. So what they said is, you can, if you have a product that says kosher lePesach with kitniot, you can eat that. And, some kosher stores will have sort of a kitniot section. And otherwise, you can get, raw, or dried beans, the actual kitniot product of the, you can eat a corn on the cob, but don't buy corn flour. You could buy, pinto beans or lentils, don't buy barley, because remember, barley is chametz. But what you do need to do, if you're buying rice or any of those things, is you should open the bag and look at it before you cook it to make sure that there's no, nothing in there that shouldn't be in there. Now, honestly, if you eat beans on a regular basis, you should check, because every once in a while there's a little rock in there. And you don't want to break your tooth on the rock. But just on the off chance that there could potentially be, some grain of wheat or a kernel of something, and that shouldn't, you should check it before you eat it. But if you, as long as you bought them before Pesach, the process of, in the middle of Pesach, if you find something in your kitchen that is a crumb, that might be a crumb of chametz, you're not going to pick it up and eat it, you're going to pick it up and throw it away. So the same would be true if you find a little something in, before you cook the lentils, if you find a little something in there that shouldn't be there, you throw it away, rinse them off, and you're fine. You don't have to have a 5-alarm kashrut emergency. Just throw it away and you're good. Jerry. So what could be a vegan substitute for a shank bone? Some people use a beet. What do you put on yours, Liz? Oh, okay. So Liz says, well, she doesn't eat it, so she just puts on a shank bone. Some people use a beet. I mean, Rav Kook, who was the chief rabbi of pre-state Israel, said that in the future, when the temple was restored, the sacrifices would all be vegetarian. So you might use something like that as a substitute.
So at the end of the first part of the Seder, we make the Hillel sandwich.
Yeah.
It says, Hillel used to take matzah, maror, and paschal lamb, but you don't eat the lamb anymore, make a sandwich out of it. Some Taganas say you add carosa to that, some say you don't. So what is it? Is it based on your minhag, or do you put carosa in that Hillel sandwich or not?
So we put haroset in our house, we put haroset in. So the question was, with the Hillel sandwich what goes in there, and that different people have different customs, and the answer is different people have different customs. See, where I thought you were going with that is Hillel says he made a sandwich. Now, if you take matzah, you cannot, the last time I checked, the matzah that I buy, you cannot fold. But the implication from Hillel is they were folding the matzah, which implies that the matzah was not rock hard and not cooked into oblivion. So there is actually, matzah, here's another shocker, matzah originally was soft. It was like a laffa or a pita, not with the air pocket in between, but it was a thin bread that was pliable. Part of that is as we got to that machine matzah, and to ensure that it was kosher without a standard of a doubt, we put it, in theory you have the 18 minutes from the bread, from the flour and the water touching to the, we've debated what the 18 minutes holds. Is it 18 minutes from that you can manipulate it, or 18 minutes from start to matzah? And in fact, it is not necessarily the whole process. It could actually be just the flour and the water touching part, and that you'd actually have a little bit more time to cook it. But in the factory process, and even with moshmar matzah, they go 18 minutes from the water touching the flour to the end process. And in fact, you go to the Manischewitz or Streitz or Yehuda factory, the whole process takes about 5 minutes. They're cooking it at like a 1500, some 1500 degree oven. It's cooked within 30 seconds. There's a guy in Rhode Island, an Orthodox rabbi in Rhode Island, who makes mitzvah matzah, which is soft matzah, and for only $18 a piece, you too can have soft matzah at your Seder. I would really like to figure out how to actually do it, because I'd love to try it sometime. Yeah, Hannah, and then Mason. You raised your hand, you got a question. What's the question? Sure. Mason.
Yes, so going back to Kikios, so we used to get soda bottles with the yellow cap because it had sugar versus corn syrup. But I feel like in the last 10 years there's been a discussion about corn syrup not being Kikio because it's so engineered and all the different processes that it wasn't actually corn. And I feel like that was something that in our show there was a lot of discussion.
So the question is what about the soda bottle with the yellow cap versus not the yellow cap? Because the yellow cap meant it was sugar. I mean, personally, I think it tastes better with the sugar. And the question there.
But there were other things made with corn syrup, like jelly rings for years made with corn syrup.
Yeah, and it's confusing. Why does sugar have to switch over for the Passover soda, but then the jelly rings used to have corn syrup? I don't think they do anymore, because it used to be.
One is cheaper versus the other.
Well, that too, but 20 years ago, even many of the Orthodox who did not use kitniot would use kitniot-derived products, but not the raw kitniot. So they would use the corn syrup, but they wouldn't use corn flour, so to speak. And I can't quite figure out what's going on there. My feeling in general, one of the things that Rabbi Ethan Tucker had said in his other responsive radio, was sometimes we can use a little common sense. And if we're talking about a product that has one ingredient, like almond milk, an unflavored almond milk that has nothing else in it, if you buy it before Passover, it's fine. It's got one ingredient. Now, a soda that has God knows how many ingredients and chemicals in there, is it likely to have chametz? It's very unlikely. But at the same time, do I really need my Dr. Pepper that much, for the week of Passover? I probably can survive on the yellow Coke for a few days. And that's the other part. It's how much of the stuff do we really need, and how much, is extra? The same thing with, does your, you certainly shouldn't have, you can't have a lot of alcohols on Pesach. If you have a place that only makes potato vodka, that's probably fine. But again, you would want to buy that before Passover, not during Passover, because here's the thing that I drive Rebecca crazy about every year. Is like, why do we have to buy things before Passover versus on Passover? Because during Passover, chametz is not nullified in any amount. So if there is any, a speck of a teensy bit of chametz in something on Passover, you can't use it. However, if you buy something before Passover, you have the batal b'shishin, the nullification process. So if when we say, on Tuesday night when we're cleaning for our house, and Wednesday morning when we say if there's any chametz left in my house, it is ownerless and I don't believe in it, it's gone, it doesn't exist anymore. If that, infinitesimal amount of something in your, in your Coca-Cola, if you really want to be pushing it, although I'm not going to, was in there, it's no longer relevant to us. But if you were to buy that Dr. Pepper halfway through Passover and somehow there really is a teeny tiny itsy bitsy bit in there, it's a problem. The question is, what are we trying to accomplish here? We're trying to make our life different for a few days. So that, if we try to make everything the same, we've forgotten about making it different. We're trying to remember the journey from slavery to freedom, from being in a place with nothing to being in a land of opportunity, to going into the promised land. So having a little bit of time of resetting our homes, resetting our hearts, I think there's something special about, avoiding a few things for a little bit. And that's why, there are, even though the conservative movement has now said for several years, there's no problem with kitniot if you buy it in advance and, and it's, plain rice with, obviously rice pilaf is no good because rice pilaf has chametz in it, it's got noodles, that's not okay. But plain rice, there's nothing, if you buy it in advance, you look to make sure there's no chametz, you're okay. But many say, look, my grandparents didn't eat rice, their grandparents didn't eat rice, their grandparents didn't eat rice. It's a week, I can go without rice. Alan?
Did they make matzah fry in the desert?
Did they make matzah brai in the desert? That's a whole other conversation because, Chabad and some ultra-Orthodox don't do what's called gebraks. Gebraks means they only eat the matzah raw. They won't cook with matzah with any liquid. There's no matzah balls. If you go to Chabad Seder, they have no matzah balls because they won't get the matzah wet because they fear that somehow the wet matzah could somehow, like if there was a teeny bit of potential of rising left, it could rise again. I could make a joke about the Confederacy, but most non-ultra Haredi groups do not believe in what's called cooking after cooking, so therefore there's no problem with gebraks on Passover. Yes, Hannah? Ooh, that's a good question. So the question was, if they were making, matzah, and that was, they were intending to make bread, so it would have been chametz, but then they didn't give it at the time to rise, so why can't we just, make things and don't give them time to rise? And the answer is, we get stricter we try to one-up our ancestors a little bit sometimes. They were so good, we're even better than them. But truly, the fact is, there's two competing narratives around matzah on Passover. Because on the one hand, we eat these flatbreads to remember that they didn't have time to rise. But at the same time, what did I mention today about Parshat Tzav and the offerings to God? Whether the offerings to God, we don't let rise. Those are unleavened. So there's that other strain, which was that they were always going to have matzah. They were never going to have their regular, thicker pita. And because of that, we are trying to be extra careful. Now the question is, how far back do we need to be careful? There's what's called shmura flour, and that to make the shmura matzah, where the wheat was watched from the moment of, from the field to the mill to being in your house. And if I were making my own matzah, I probably want to find that flour, but I can't figure out where you buy it. So, Hannah. Ooh, that's another good question. Why isn't Moses in the Haggadah? I'm going to let somebody else answer that. How come Moses isn't in the Haggadah?
Because God's the one who brought us out of Egypt.
So it's a focusing tool. Sometimes if we focus too much about if we told the story of Passover in the way that would make sense, of going through and reading from the book of Exodus, Moses would show up all the time. And we might end up doing something that we don't like to do as Jews, which is to sort of worship somebody. And in fact, at the end of the Torah, in Deuteronomy, it says that God buried Moshe, God's self, and not in a known place. Why? Because we didn't want Moshe's tomb to become a place where people worship. I mean, it's this whole interesting conversation, in the modern world, because you can go to the tomb of Maimonides, we can go to the tomb of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah. We can go to, before the Palestinians destroyed it, you could go to Rachel's tomb. There were certain, and you go to Tzfat, you can go see all of these tombs, graves of rabbis, and people, you don't have to go that far. You can go to Queens, and you can go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Ohel, and they built the synagogue there, and you can go and leave a note. And so some Jews feel like that's an acceptable practice of you're not praying to the rabbi, you're praying that the rabbi will share your prayer with God and lift it up. But others see that closer to idolatry and see it as a practice. You have to be very careful that you are not praying to the rabbi, you are praying to God. And that's a difference between Judaism and some other faiths where we don't pray to saints. But some Jews ask prominent, past Jewish figures for assistance in praying to God, which gets very close. And so other Jews get very, very uncomfortable with that concept. But so we, I think sometimes, like a lot of times, like at our Seder, we'll mention the fact that Moses isn't mentioned. And that's this acknowledgement of, we know that Moses was really important, and we know this journey as a people was very important, but that God was the one who took us out of Egypt. God made all the miracles. Moses was just the vessel for that journey. Moses was the assistant. So I think it's time to move on, but if anyone have one more question. Going once, going twice. $15,000 for Gulf Coast. No, wait, that was the other night. So may this be a sweet and a kosher Pesach. As much as I say, there are opportunities of stringencies and leniencies, there is something very beautiful about going through and making sure that you have all your Passover things out and visible, and anything you're not going to use hidden and locked up. Yes, I had a little bit of fun with the blowtorch in the synagogue kitchen the other day, but part of that, is that 100% necessary to blowtorch the countertops? Not entirely, but by doing that, we create a space where we can say, this has been cleaned without a doubt. There is no possibility of chametz here, and nobody can say that our kitchen is not kosher for Passover, and that anyone should be able to eat here. So we go to the highest of the highest mahadran for our kitchen to make sure that everyone should feel welcome.
One question. As you mentioned, countertop, what about granite countertop?
So some Sephardic rabbis, so I'm going to give you the lenient answer first. So some Sephardic rabbis would ask you, are you cooking on your countertop? Does it ever get to Yad Solet Bo where you're touching it and you would burn yourself on the countertop? And they would say, clean your countertop, wash it, wipe it down, and if you use soap or chemicals, nothing that would potentially be left there would be an issue. many Ashkenazi rabbis would say you should carefully boil water and pour it over the countertop to prevent any any taste from being there before. So we can talk afterwards if you have more specific questions. But if you lean a little Sephardic, you have a little more permission to just clean really, really well. If you lean a little more Ashkenazi, you may want to consider boiling water. But but with granite, there's no need to cover everything with aluminum foil either way. So page 155, we rise. Amen.
יש מרבה מבורך, לעולם לעולם יתברך. יתברך, וישתבח, ויתפרביץ רבינעשה, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלש, ונגונשה בריחו. לעילה מקום בגתה ושירתה, קדוש בגתה ונחמתה, דמירה מעלמה, במלואו אמן.
Begin together, page 156b.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, v'Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachem, Elokei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hatorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot, u'mevii Goalim Ne'bneihem, למען שמו רעה. מלך עוזר פוקד מושיע מגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור למרדכי, מחיי מתים מטרה להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומן המלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה המתים. נריצך ונפתישך, כסוף ציית שרפי קודש, המקישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה בעם. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא מלא עולמים מקום כבודו. כבודו מלא מלא עולמים מקום כבודו. כבודו מלא מלא עולם, משאר נפשלים שואלים זה לזה, מקום כבודו. משאר נפשלים שואלים זה לזה, מקום כבודו. Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Mashiachenu, Vehu Yashmienu, Merachamav, Shenit, Shenit, Le'enei Kolai, Li'olachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem Librei Lakatu Lemor. Eloi Tzion, Hallelujah. Ledovanor Nagig Olecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim Yerushacha Nakish, B'shivchacha Eloheinu Mipinu Layadosh Lamaed, Ki Amelech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Yitkanam Yikana Shemer Abba.
Amen.
Be'alma Tivrakinu Tevi Amdik Vakatim Betai Kol Mime Kol Gaidu Me Yisrael. Bagalavis Man Karim Imrahu Amen.
Yismer Abba Bevarach Le'olam Yomei Almaya Yidbarach
Barak Vishtabak Parchamina Semi Chadar Vital Levi Talash Sham
Brechu
La'ela Min Komegatam Shirata Tushvigatam Negmata Damira Me'alma Vimruhu Amen Titkabal Torah Kondela Yisrael Kodam Avon Vishmaya Vimruhu Amen Yehishlam Marava Vishmaya Vechaim Alenu Me'alko Yisrael Vimruhu Amen Ose Shalom Imrama Yase Shalom Alen Vako Yisrael Veimeru Amen.
Girls, you want to come up for Ein Kelohenu?
Nachad, Shtayim, Shalosh.
Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemashiachenu, Sheptiru Avotenu Lefanecha Negatoret Asami.
Aleinu l'shabeach Adon HaKol, l'ateichinu l'aliotzer Bereshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishmekot ha'adama, shelo samtem ke'nupahem, v'kol aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu komim u'mishtahavim hodim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו לגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו על זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום מהשמות אל אבותיך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר, היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
We remember this week Jacob Gelman, Cy J., Saul Myers, Celia Sweet, Alfred Son, Norman Lev, Miriam Ida Feldman, Lee Schwartz, Morris Sklar, Isidore Cole, Carl Fry, Samuel Mensch, Jackie Jacobs, Dorothy Schuster, Max Yanchuk, Peter Lipman, Barney Cohen, Harold Woolsey Canfield, Samuel Goodman, Max Fish, Benjamin Warman, Libby Plain, Fred Silverman, Barbara Feynman, Rose Kaminsky, Michael Greenberg, Harry Kraft, and Joan Amy Ruse Swartz. May their memories be a blessing. Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 184. If you are having yahrzeit or at the time of mourning, please join me. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash merabam. Bi'alma tivrach chirutei v'yamlech malchutei. B'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael. Magalav Isman Kariv Yimru Amen. Yehesh Shmer Rabba Mevorach Leolam Olomei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei D'Kudsha B'richum La'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nachamata Damaran V'alma V'yimru Amen. Yehesh Lama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'roma v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. You may be seated. Invite Mary for a few announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Mally Feld, a member of the Board of Trustees. Thank you to Rabbi Weintraub, Hazan Schultz, Phil Bloom, Riva Perlstein, Jake Kaufman, and Torita Bob Weinrib for enhancing the service. We also thank all of you who participated in today's service. Minyan times are going to be different during the week of Pesach, so please check the CBI calendar or the Shabbat program for the most accurate times. Passover begins on Wednesday evening with the first Seder. That Wednesday morning, CBI will celebrate the traditional firstborn breakfast sponsored by Joan and Beth Ann Reddish. It's a very nice breakfast, and a not-so-well-kept secret is you don't need to be a firstborn to come and enjoy it. Yom Tov services for Pesach will be Thursday, April 6th and Friday, April 7th at 9 o'clock a.m. Reservations are required for our CBI's second night community Seder. Be sure to check CBI's website for details on service times for the week and to reserve your place for the popular Men's Club Passover Barbecue, which will be Sunday, April 9th. The deadline for Men's Club Passover Barbecue is tomorrow, so you can still sign up on the CBI website. There will be no Kabbalat Shabbat service next Friday, but Kol HaMoed Shabbat services will be held at 9 o'clock a.m. on Saturday morning. Finally, we continue a old CBI tradition with a handshake of friendship to your neighbors to wish them a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, girls, you can come on up for a donut lunch. We'll turn to page 187.
Okay, Stein Shalos.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra V'Nasa B'Soko Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Acharet Kichlot HaKol Levado Imloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Over Ve'hu Yeh B'Tifara Ve'hu Echad V'Ein Sheni Ve'amshilo Le'achbira V'li Reshit V'li Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'ha'misra Ve'hu Edi Ve'chai Goati Ve'tzorevi V'etzahara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi Ve'yom Echra Ve'yado Afkid Ruchi Ve'etishan Ve'ayira V'imruchi Gevihati Adonai Ve'lo-ira Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbat Lasot at Shabbat Otam Borit Olam Ve'ni Ovein b'nei Yisrael Atili Olam Ki Sheshtim Yasad Nai Shemay B'Tar Tzoi Mashvi Shabbat Ve'nafash Al Ken Brachi Yom Shabbat Ve'Kadshei Chazri Zavri Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei Peri Agafen Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kishanim Et Chitzat V'Timano Anzilat Yadayim Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Amotzi Lechem Min Haaretz Could you should be in the lobby? Some yummy cake. And girls, you can have this all but eat it on the bima. I don't want to block. I'll make it through that. Have your challah right here, and then I'm going to take the rest of the challah out there. Challah here or out there?
Yeah.